In this video, I want to show how to install, configure, set up, and secure Heartbeat so that it can be used with Elasticsearch and Kibana version 8. Heartbeat is a very useful tool for monitoring the uptime of services available on HTTP, TCP, or ICMP. In a few days, I will be releasing part 2 to this video. Part 2 will focus on configuring email alerts and notifications on top of Heartbeat. But for this video, I'll focus on getting things up and running. This video assumes you already have Elastic and Kibana installed. If you haven't done that yet, I will leave a link in the description to a video that shows you how to get Elastic and Kibana up and running. The other thing we need is a server that we will install Heartbeat on. I spun up a new installation of Ubuntu 20.04 here in this window. This server will act as an observer to monitor the uptime of any service that we are interested in. So before we begin, I want to say that if you find the contents of this video helpful, then give this video a like. And if you want to stay on top of the videos as we release them, then you can subscribe to this channel. All right, let's get started. I'm going to install Heartbeat Elastic to this new instance of Ubuntu 20.04. And you can find the installation instructions on the Heartbeat section of the Elastic website. I'm going to use the apt-get approach, and it's simply just copy these 1, 2, 3, and 4 commands and run them. And the 4 commands are basically get a public signing key, install a dependency, update the repository, and then and then install Heartbeat. So I'll copy each 4 of these commands, and I'll paste it into one single bash script so I can just run it all at once instead of running them independently. So I'll just paste it in here like this. And I'll just update the permissions. And I'll let this thing install for a moment. Okay, that took a few seconds, so it was pretty quick. Next, let's configure Heartbeat. So if you go to the etc directory, into the Heartbeat directory, you're going to see some of the default configuration files that came with your installation of Heartbeat. And I'm going to open up this one right here, which is the main one. And I'll explain some of the options that are relevant to us. So the first section that we want to look at is the heartbeat.config.monitors. And what this section does is that it allows you to define each monitor in a separate file within the monitors.d directory. So if I click out of here for a moment, you can see that there's a directory here called monitors.d, and we can define our monitors in there. And the benefit of defining our monitors in a separate file in a different directory is that if we set the reload.enabled to true, what this means is that as we add new monitors in this directory here, we don't actually need to systemctl restart Heartbeat. Heartbeat will automatically pick up the new monitors that you defined in this directory at a period of 5 seconds. So that's the benefit of specifying your monitors in a separate file. So I'll demonstrate more of how to do that a little bit later on. And this section here is basically the other way to define monitors is we can define it inline right here. And if we define the monitors inline, anytime we add new monitors to this file, we will need to do a systemctl restart of the Heartbeat service. So let's start with this because it's the easiest. Now, if I remove this line, it will enable this monitor. Oh, you know what? Before I even get to that, let's talk about the first property here. So the type. Let's actually pull up the documentation for a moment. If I come over here, there are different types that we can use. So with the type, here it is, monitor types. If it loads, right, the type can be ICMP, TCP, HTTP, or browser, but I think browser might be in a beta-ish mode. You might need to double check that afterwards. But the 3 different types that are commonly used is either one of these. And within each of these, there could be specific options you can set, or let's click on common monitor options. So these properties here, type, ID, name, service.name, and there's a whole slew of other ones. These are going to be common to ICMP, TCP, and HTTP, unless stated otherwise somewhere else in the documentation. So I think one simple monitor to do is an HTTP monitor. And if I remove this line, it will enable it, or I set this to true. Only because enabled, I think by default it's true. Right? So we'll give a specific ID to this monitor. It should be unique for every single monitor. So I'll just say, what should I call it? Let's say test Apache, because I believe I have a different server somewhere and all I did was install Apache to it. So at this local IP address within my office. So maybe let's do a heartbeat monitor of this URL. So the next option we can set here is name, just something human readable so that we can easily read it in Kibana. You know what? Let's just be a bit more consistent. Apache website. Right? Just remember, each monitor should have a unique ID. The name doesn't matter as much. And the URL is, and this could also be out to the public web as well. It doesn't have to be a local IP address. Okay, so, and let's check every 10 seconds. And I believe if you look at the documentation, this can also take on a cron tab-like format, or you can specify it in a more human readable way like this. So I'll keep it to, let's say, every 5 seconds. All right, so that's our first monitor. We could actually define another monitor in here as well. In fact, let's set up a monitor to ping the REST API of our Elasticsearch service. So it will be a RESTful state HTTP protocol and enabled. Let's say this is Elastic REST, and let's say Elastic and the destination for that would actually be HTTPS elastic.evermite.net 9200, and this URL actually points to, I believe, a local server somewhere. And let's actually make sure this is the correct URLs, because I'm going to take this, copy, and I will paste it into a web browser. All right. So the super user is Elastic ABCD1234. Now, to make sure that our heartbeat monitor actually can access this endpoint and get a successful 200 response, I will need to give it a username. So this is going to be the same username and password that we just put into that pop-up window. And this is what I would be using to log into Kibana with as a super user. All right, so that should do that. So now we've got two monitors defined, and that's basically all that is. And later on, I'll define some more monitors in a separate directory. Moving on. Oh, we need to specify our Kibana URL right over here. And it is enabled. So that's basically the same URL, this top level domain with the port number right there. Next is we need to specify the connection details to our Elasticsearch, because Heartbeat needs to send all its information there. I am using a commercially signed SSL certificate, so HTTPS, and the username and password. So we'll use the super user that we would log into Kibana with. And that's okay for this initial setup because setup is just a one-time command. But for ongoing usage of Heartbeat, for Heartbeat to publish ongoing event data to Elastic, we're a little bit later, we're going to replace these credentials with a less privileged user. That way, if this server ever gets compromised, at least bad actors won't gain access to our super user credentials. And the worst they'll do is just have read-only access to the Heartbeat's less privileged user. So we'll come back to that afterwards, but for now we'll use the super user just because we need to run a setup command, and it's okay to use a super user for setup because it's a one-time thing. And I believe that's pretty much it. So let's test our configuration files for any errors before we actually run our setup command. So if I go to, where was it? Oh, right here. USR share Heartbeat directory. In the binary directory, we're going to have some of these Heartbeat commands that came with the installation of Heartbeat. And what we'll do is run Heartbeat, and we are going to test our configuration files for any errors, syntax errors, or anything like that. Our Heartbeat file is this one. And I might as well state some of these other flags that I seem to need for my installations, but on some of my other colleagues' machines, sometimes it seems like they don't need to run these. They don't need to include these extra flags. So maybe their environment variables are just set better. But I'll just do this just to be safe. Heartbeat. So that's where all the Heartbeat resources are. Path.data and var lib Heartbeat. And the path.data, eventually we're going to create a key store to secure some sensitive information. And I want those key store files to be placed in this var lib Heartbeat directory. So let's test our configuration file. All right, that's a good sign. No errors. Now let's test the connection to our Elastic Stack. Output. Okay, everything is good. So this IP address is actually the elastic.evermite.net. So I'm hosting Elastic locally on in my office network, but you could just as well have Elastic hosted in a separate VPS or bare metal machine somewhere out in the web. Okay, I think we're ready to run the setup at this point. And it's really just the same command, but we replace test config with the word setup. And what we're going to notice is, well, before I run this command, let me go to Kibana for a moment. And if I go to, let's say, under observability, and I click overview, we're going to see that there's this little widget somewhere. Let me see. Here it is. Uptime. So this widget is saying, please install, or you have the option to install Heartbeat. The moment we run our setup command, this widget will disappear and we're going to see some new functionality in here. As well as under uptime monitors, we will see that this page gets replaced with some new functionality. So let's go ahead and run the setup. All right, and it's pretty quick. And with that, if I refresh this page, and we can now see some new dashboards under here, as well as if we go back to observability for a moment, the Heartbeat widget has disappeared, and now we have a list of monitors, or an area where it will list our monitors the moment we start running Heartbeat. The other thing we can check also is if we go to over here under stack management, and if I click to index management, I click the data streams, we should see that there's now a placeholder data stream here with one index, and you can already see some of the field mappings that have been defined for Heartbeat when we eventually turn it on. So I think everything is almost ready for us to actually turn on and use Heartbeat. Actually, there is one more thing we have to do before we can actually run Heartbeat. and that is we need to create a less privileged user for Heartbeat to use to submit publishing data on an ongoing basis. So that's something we mentioned just moments ago. And if I go to the Heartbeat website or the Elastic website, and I look at the Heartbeat section for creating a publishing user, you can see that on this page here, these are the fewest privileges that a user must have for Heartbeat to be able to publish data to Elastic. So I'm going to create a role with these privileges, then assign that role to a new user. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to click on security roles, create a new role, and we can call it anything we want. I'll call it Heartbeat Publisher. And we need the privileges monitor and read index lifecycle management. So let's say monitor, this one, read ILM. And then we need the create doc on the Heartbeat index. Okay. So there was something else we need to do before we even create this role, is that unlike the other beats, we actually have to manually set up our own data view for Heartbeat. So you click to Kibana, data views, create a data view. And in here, we need to set it up ourselves. So I'll do this, Heartbeat star timestamp, yes, save data to Kibana. And now we should have this data view. In fact, if I go to Discover, let me open this as a new tab. We should see now in a moment that we have this tab drop down here. Before creating this, just like a few minutes ago, a few seconds ago, this option would not have been here. So it's only because we created the data view now that this option is now here. And with the data view being available, now let's actually create the role for the user. Where am I? Security. Oh, whoops, sorry. I just have to close that. There, security roles. Let's try this again. Heartbeat Publisher. We'll call it anything we want. Monitor. Whoops. Read ILM. We want the create doc privilege on the Heartbeat index. So this and create doc. And now we will press save or create role. All right, role has been made. Now let's actually create a user. And the username, I will call it Heartbeat Publisher. Full name, let's just do that. Email address, doesn't really matter. I'll call it anything I want because I don't intend on sending myself a reset password as part of this demonstration. Password, I'll keep it something simple. Just something like ABCD1234. Let's do the same thing again, ABCD1234. And let's use this new role that we created, and we'll create user. And at that point, we could actually just go into our Heartbeat file. And I could actually just change the username to Heartbeat Publisher and use this password and just systemctl enable Heartbeat Elastic, systemctl start Heartbeat Elastic, and things should work. But I don't like leaving username passwords in a file like this. I prefer to use an API key or API token. So let's actually do that next. Now, to create an API token, what we can do is we go to Dev Tools over here. And if this is the first time you're here, you should just close this introduction. And there's a command you can run, which is, let me just copy from another window and I will paste it in here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to ping the REST API endpoint for security API underscore key grant. And we're going to create an API token for this user. Now, to be able to do that, we're going to need to specify we're going to use the grant type password, and therefore we're going to have to specify the password that's used to log in with this user. And we're going to call that API key, we're just going to give it a handle of Heartbeat Publisher in case we ever need to query for this API key. We have kind of an easy to read, human readable name to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And there we go. This is our API key. And this is the base64 encoded version of this key over here. So we're going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it in here because we're going to need to remember this. And specifically, the format we need is the ID and the API key like this. So ID colon API key. Now, if I took this string and then I pasted it into this line over here, whoops, let me go up. Let me comment this out because at this point we don't actually need this. Now, if I paste it into here, things would actually work. But I don't like leaving sensitive information in a file like this. And this is where we can use the Heartbeat key store to encrypt any secrets and store it in a separate file and then load it as an environment variable into this file. So I'm going to use an environment variable called ES API key. And you can call it anything we want because we're going to declare it in a moment. Right? And with that, I'm going to delete these two so no one ever sees that. And let's actually use the key store to actually define this environment variable. So if I go to share Heartbeat binary, and it's basically like the setup command, but what we're going to do is we're going to change the word setup to key store, add ES API key, so the name of the variable that we want to declare. And if I press enter, oh yeah, right. It's saying that we didn't create the key store file yet, so let's start a new one. Yes. All right. Paste in the value, so that will be this. And I believe that should be it. We can actually now just go systemctl enable Heartbeat Elastic. All right, and I will now do systemctl start Heartbeat Elastic. Whoops, Elastic. And what we should see is if I go back to Kibana, and let's say I click on the observability overview, or if I click on, well, oh, how come it disappeared? Anyway, I'll just click here for now. We should see in a moment the monitor should appear. Some monitors should appear here, specifically the Apache website and the Elastic API endpoint. So I'll pause for a moment until something shows up. It's actually been a few minutes and the monitors are still not showing up, so I'm going to see what's wrong. Actually, yeah, so I noticed that there's a permission error with publishing events. And I've actually ran into this before. And for whatever reason, it's not explained in the Heartbeat documentation. But I think the first time you publish something to Heartbeat, it has to be done with a more privileged user to initialize some indexes or something like that. So this is my workaround for it, is that I'm not going to use the less privileged user yet. I'm going to use the super user. I'm going to use the super user like this. All right, so I'm going to restart the systemctl service. Systemctl restart Heartbeat Elastic. And once I see some monitors in here, so there we go. Now we have two monitors. Now I'm going to systemctl stop. And then I'm going to open up that Heartbeat YAML file again. And now I'm going to remove the super user. And now going forward, I should be able to use the less privileged user. right? So if I hit refresh, yeah, let me actually pick another one, maybe this one. There we go. So uptime. So I'm going to wait a few minutes and I'll come back in a moment to make sure that there's constantly uptime on this. Okay, everything's been running for a while and it looks like things are fine now. Let's do a quick test. I'm going to try to bring down this Apache server and see if the heartbeat picks up that change. Now I'm going to SSH to that Apache server. And I'm going to go systemctl stop Apache 2. And when I do that, in a moment, I believe this should be off. Perfect, it just went down. So now let's bring it back up. And in a moment, I believe this should be back up. Great, it's back up now. So next, I want to try setting up another monitor without having to reload Heartbeat. And this will go back to how we said that we can go into the Heartbeat monitor.d directory and set up monitors in this directory here. So you can see that Heartbeat has already given us some disabled templates. So I'm going to copy one of them. And I'll call it httpd.yaml.disabled. I'm not going to remove the word disabled from it just yet until I've successfully populated it first. So let's open up this file. And what we're going to do is, let's say, maybe I'll use the Evermite company website. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to give it a unique ID. So I know that's not going to be used yet. Human readable name. And let's try the cron tab format this time. Every 5 seconds. I believe that's how many. Let me double check. Yes, that looks about right. Okay, so let's change the URL. And I believe everything else can stay the same. It's enabled by default. So that's one monitor. We could add another one, but we'll just leave it as is. Save, and now let's enable it. And let's see if in a moment we see a new entry in here. Great, a new entry has appeared here and I didn't have to do a systemctl reload of Heartbeat Elastic. Another thing I want to demonstrate is how to set up multiple Heartbeat servers to monitor these same URLs. And the benefit of that is that if any one of your Heartbeat servers should go down, at least you have other servers that are monitoring these URLs, right? So right now we have this Evermite 1 server that we just finished installing Heartbeat to. Let's install to another server. So I have this window here, which is another clean installation of Ubuntu 20.04. And let's install Heartbeat to this as well. So I'm going to do the exact same steps. And let's go over here. Let's copy these instructions that we just finished using into here. And let's run that. Great, everything is installed. So let's copy over the same Heartbeat YAML files that we used on the Evermite 1 server. And they would be in here. In fact, I'll just copy it from here. I believe the address for this server was 192.168.0.61. And heartbeat. In fact, I'll just copy all the YAML files that we have over here. And let's go into the monitor.d directory and same thing. Great. Now the only change I would make is if we scroll to the bottom section over here. In fact, before I even show that, if we look in our dashboard here, if we open one of these monitors, you can see there's a little bit of a note here saying that there is a heartbeat server monitoring this URL, but we don't know where that heartbeat server is. And we have the option to add location to it. So if we have let's say two different servers monitoring this URL, one heartbeat server can be, let's say, in Peru, and another one could be in Spain, as an example. And we can label it. And we can do that labeling through this processors add underscore observer underscore metadata. And I will uncomment the geo and the name. The name can be anything human readable. So I will just state, let's say this Evermite 2 server is from Lima, Peru. And the latitude and longitude, they're optional arguments. They're useful if you want to see where this server is on a map visual, which I can enable later. So let's go ahead and just do something like that. Let me figure out what the lat to long is. Oh, here it is. There we go. So that's the latitude and longitude for Lima, Peru. Yeah, and I think that's all we need to do for this file. Oh, wait, no, we have to also create this environment variable. So let's do that. And it was key store add heartbeat YAML file path.home path.data to where we store our key store. I forgot one more thing. The name of our variable. So that's our environment variable name. Yes. And let's copy it from our notepad from here. Paste it in there. And I think if I enable and restart and start it up, in a moment, we should see Peru as a possible heartbeat location in this table here. Let me just hit refresh. Yes, and we can see here, location 2 of 2. And so we have Peru here, and there's another unnamed location. That's because of Evermite 1. In Evermite 1, we didn't specify the location yet. So let's do that here. And I will let's uncomment this. Uncomment this. And the lat long is optional, but I'll fill it in anyway. Oops. I'll restart the heartbeat service, and I think in a moment, every single monitor should have 2 locations fully labeled. I will just hit refresh. Okay, we can see 3 of 3 locations. I think maybe maybe there's just some overlap during these windows. Let me bring it down to 2 minutes. I wonder why that is. Well, we can see Madrid, Spain. We can see Lima, Peru. I think over time, this will just go back down to 2 of 2 locations. So I'll wait a little bit longer. Okay, great. It didn't take too long, but now you can see it's just back down to 2 of 2 locations. And now we see just Madrid, Spain and Lima, Peru in here. And clicking into any of these monitors will give you just very obvious and easy to understand visualizations. Next, let's also show these monitors on a map. So let me click to the menu and then I click on Maps. So if I do add layer, and let's say we do a heat map, and for the data, we'll use the heartbeat data view. And instead of client.geolocation, let's do observer.geolocation. I'll press add layer. And I will, in fact, you can already see it pop up here. And we'll just press save. And we can save this to a new dashboard. Let's just say observer heartbeat observers. And let's make this a new dashboard. And I will go ahead and just save it. In fact, let's resize this a little bit. Press save. Oh, I'm wondering why it's asking me again. Heartbeat observer. Observers. Might as well pluralize it. All right, and we'll have this dashboard always available to us. And I believe we can always just find under dashboards here, right, heartbeat observers. This concludes this video. We will be releasing part 2 shortly, which focuses on alerts and email notifications within Heartbeat. If you found this video helpful, then help us out by clicking the like button. And if you want to be informed of videos as we release them, then you can subscribe to this channel. See you in the next video.